The £500 that's mooted to be offered to people who test positive for COVID-19. It does seem a little bit like bribery. We've been with this pandemic for a year. Does it indicate that the government's message simply isn't getting through if you're having to offer £500 to people?
No, but look, I think the point is we're obviously in a full lockdown at the moment, so everybody should be staying at home wherever they can unless they have to go out to work. We do know, we've always recognised that if you ask people to self-isolate because through contact tracing they've been in contact with someone who's had the virus, that is a financial challenge for some. That's why we've always had a £500 payment for those who qualify for certain benefits. I'm not going to comment on this particular paper, but we've always kept it under review. We do need people, if they're asked to self-isolate because they've been contacted through test and trace, we do need them to self-isolate. And obviously, we always review the reasons why they might not.
It's going to cost £2 billion a month.
Well, look, no decisions have been made on this, but this is a dynamic, fast-moving situation with the pandemic. But we're always keeping multiple policies under review. We've had a targeted £500 payment already for those who are on benefits to help them with the costs of staying at home when they're unable to work. Obviously, for most people, they would qualify for statutory sick pay, and there are other supports that we've had for businesses as well. No decision has been made on this, but we've always kept these things under review.
Another proposal being considered is that police are given access to people's health data in the fight against COVID non-compliance. Are you comfortable with that and the possible infringement on civil liberty?
Well, look, generally with this whole pandemic, we've had to take some quite, extraordinary steps, very draconian steps that are a big infringement on people's liberty, asking them to stay at home, telling them they can't meet and can't go out. None of us want these restrictions to stay in place a moment longer, but we are in a very serious position, as your package showed earlier. We're seeing high infection rates at the moment. That's still continuing with this new virulent strain of the coronavirus. Sadly, we are seeing quite high mortality at the moment. There is pressure on our NHS, and we need everybody to play their part to abide by the restrictions that we've got in place to limit the spread of this virus. And yes, that does mean that we have to intervene, sometimes in quite a draconian way, and issue penalties. And we make no apology for doing that, because you can see the impacts of this virus spreading.
Well, why do you think it is that still people are flouting the restrictions, the COVID restrictions? What is not working?
Well, most people are following the restrictions. So if you go to any supermarket or any outdoor space, you'll find people wearing masks, abiding by this, staying home as much as they can. I think the vast majority of people do recognise the gravity of the situation and are following the restrictions, but there's a small minority who don't, and it was ever thus. That's always the position, and you must therefore have the ability to issue penalties to those who do flout the rules. We do understand that these are quite draconian steps that we've had to take. They are necessary. We wouldn't do them unless they were necessary. Obviously, there's some fatigue with the measures from some people, but we do need them to abide by it, because we can see the consequences through packages like you've just shown,
yes,
the pressures on our NHS.
And that fatigue that you describe is leading to people flouting the rules and really wanting one simple question answered: is when will the lockdown end?
Well, the lockdown will end once we've made further progress on rolling out the vaccines, and we're doing incredibly well, better than any other country in the world. Just shy of 5 million people have been vaccinated as of yesterday. We're vaccinating over 200,000 people every day, and our aim is to vaccinate all of those vulnerable cohorts, the over 70s, by the middle of February. And if we can get to that position, then by the spring we can start to turn the corner, because we will have vaccinated all of the vulnerable people that are most at risk.
Wouldn't it be fairer just to say to people and be honest and say that, this might go on for a much longer period than first envisaged, and, we're in for the long haul?
Well, I think we have been straight with people that this will go on for as long as it needs to. We do have this more virulent strain. We don't want to be in lockdown a moment longer than necessary. Obviously, it's incredibly disruptive for people's lives, incredibly disruptive to the economy. But we're not going to come out of this until it's safe to do so. And that will require us to have made further progress on the vaccine and to have got that infection rate and the overall prevalence of the virus back down to much more manageable levels.
But we know, don't we, that Ireland and Scotland have already extended their lockdowns. Will it follow that we will follow suit? Because we always seem to be lagging behind the other nations.
Well, look, different parts of the country have got slightly different challenges and slightly different approaches, but we're all ultimately in the same boat, fighting the same pandemic. We try to coordinate and work together as a United Kingdom, but I think the important thing is to make the right judgment. We've been very clear that we keep this under review. Indeed, this week, Matt Hancock has considered whether there's a case for keeping the lockdown in. He's decided there is for at least another 2 weeks. It's reviewed every couple of weeks, and that's the right way to do this, given it's quite a dynamic, fast-moving situation.
In the briefing last night, the question of foreign holidays was mentioned a couple of times. Lots of people will be planning now for their summer holidays, particularly those on lower incomes who might have to pay for them in instalments. It's going to leave it very late for them if a decision comes in the summer months as to whether they can go away this year.
Yes, look, and I do realise, we absolutely recognise this, that people's lives are on hold in some ways. They're in lockdown, and nobody can quite see where we will be by the summer. But what they can see is the pace at which we are rolling out the vaccine. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Once we get all of those vulnerable cohorts vaccinated and start to move down the age ranges in sort of late spring, early summer, I really think it will be possible to return to life much closer to normal. It won't be entirely normal initially, but we will be able to come out of the lockdown and start living life again in the way that we once did.
Fanny, there are reports that ministers are pushing for full closure of borders to foreign visitors. Is that something that you would want to see?
Well, look, we always keep these things under review, and it's been considered. There is concern at the moment about the number of mutant strains that there are, so different strains of this coronavirus are cropping up in other countries. Concerns that there's a risk that one day there will be a strain that might be able to evade the vaccine. That's why last week the Prime Minister toughened up the current restrictions. We require a test before people travel, and then they must quarantine while they're here. There are now no exemptions from that policy. So we've already toughened it up. We think that's the right approach for now, but obviously everything's always kept under review.
But is it something that you personally would like to see, that all borders are closed to foreign visitors?
Well, personally, I wouldn't like to see all borders closed. I'd like us to get past this pandemic, get the vaccine rolled out and be able to start opening things again rather than closing things. But we can't rule anything out. But for now, the restrictions we have in place with that requirement for quarantine and the requirement for a pre-travel test, we think that is sufficient and the right and appropriate measure for now.
Might you be planning a foreign holiday?
Not at the moment. At the moment, I'm very busy dealing with other things such as floods. And I know, though, that many people, once we get out of this, will want to return to life as normal and will want to go on that much-missed holiday that we've not been able to have for the last 12 months.